Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're tuning in because today we're unpacking something that is literally reshaping how we create, share, and just generally exist online. We are looking at Meta's incredibly powerful new generative AI tools. And let me tell you, the sheer capabilities of these systems are totally mind-bending. But, as we're going to see, the mechanics powering them under the surface, well, they're sparking some really intense global debates. We've got a lot of fascinating ground to cover, so let's just jump right in. So picture this scenario for a second. You're typing a prompt into your phone, and instead of describing some random generic person, you just type the @ symbol followed by your best friend's social media handle. And boom, instantly, there they are, starring in a fully generated custom video or image. No way, right? It sounds straight out of a science fiction movie. Well, let's dive into this because Meta has officially turned that futuristic concept into an everyday social media feature. Think about it. What used to take hours of specialized video editing or, complicated deepfake software can now be done by millions of everyday users with just a simple text prompt. It's a massive, massive leap forward in accessible tech, and it's fundamentally changing how we interact with media. To really wrap our heads around the shift, here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll meet the new tools, master the art of prompting, and figure out their best use cases. Then, we'll take a peek under the hood at Emu, explore the jump to the Muse agent, and finally, unpack that major Instagram privacy catch I hinted at. Okay, Section 1. Meet Meta's Generative AI. So Meta hasn't just dropped one single tool. They've deployed an entire ecosystem. First, you've got the Meta AI app, where you can literally just type prompts to generate these hyper-realistic images on the fly. Then there's the Vibes app. This one's cool because it takes those static images and actually animates them into dynamic video clips. And powering a lot of this magic is the Emu Foundation model. Think of it as this incredibly efficient engine for generation and editing. And most recently, they introduced Muse Image and Spark, which represent a totally new way that AI processes our requests. The goal across the board? Super simple. Turn your plain language into expressive visual clips as fast as humanly possible. Moving right along to Section 2, Mastering the AI Prompts. Let's see how building a prompt actually works in practice. If you give the AI a super vague prompt, like Step 1, imagine a polar bear at a pool, the AI basically has to guess what you want. I mean, it might look okay, but you're totally lacking control. But add a specific action, like Step 2, relaxing in a deck chair, and suddenly the model has a very clear focal point. Finally, slap on some constraints. Step 3, use a style like early 2000s 3D animation. Just like that, you've transformed a really generic generation into a highly detailed, targeted, and actually usable piece of content. To get those consistent results, you kind of have to think like the machine. The AI prioritizes literal instructional clarity over poetic storytelling. You really want to start with one single visible action. Don't describe what the scene means on an emotional level. Describe exactly what is appearing on the screen. Keep your environments simple, keep them grounded, and always, always use plain, literal language. It's basically a subject, action, environment, constraint formula. Stick to that, and your outputs are going to be remarkably stable. Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, what it does well. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly where this technology sits today. These tools are absolutely fantastic for rapid concept visualization. If you need to storyboard a quick idea or you just want to experiment with a quirky, fun visual for social media, it is perfect. But on the flip side, it is definitely not ready for high-stakes performance ads or brand-strict campaigns where a company logo has to be pixel perfect or those really long, complex multi-scene narratives. As the visual complexity ramps up, the AI's consistency drops off. So think of it as an exploration layer right now, rather than a strict end-to-end production system. All right, let's take a look at the tech making this possible in Section 4, Under the Hood with Emu. So previous video models were frankly pretty heavy and slow. Sometimes they required a whole cascade of 5 different models just to spit out a single clip. Meta's Emu, though, uses this incredibly smart factorized approach. It basically splits the job into 2 super efficient steps. First, it uses one diffusion model to generate a static image right from your text. Then, it uses a second model to take that image, combine it with the text, and generate the video. That's it. Just 2 models. This streamlined process lets it output 512 by 512 pixel, 4-second videos at 16 frames per second with stunning efficiency. And the results of this streamlined approach? Well, they pretty much speak for themselves. In human evaluations where they compared Emu Video against Meta's own previous model, which was called Make a Video, a staggering 96% of respondents preferred Emu based on visual quality. That is huge. It's not just faster, it's fundamentally churning out visuals that our human eyes find so much more appealing and coherent. But listen, creation is only half the battle, right? Editing is the other piece of the puzzle. To power Emu Edit, Meta trained the model on 10 million synthesized samples. 10 million! They didn't just teach it to make things look pretty, they taught it absolute precision. If you ask it to put the word aloha on a baseball cap, the model alters only the pixels of the hat to add the text, leaving the entire rest of the image completely untouched. That kind of surgical precision, that comes directly from those 10 million training tasks. Section 5. The Agentic Leap with Muse. Up until now, we've basically been talking about standard generators. You give an instruction, it gives an output. But Muse Image is what's known as an agent. What that means is it doesn't just blindly execute a prompt, it actually reasons. If you ask it for something factual, it can jump out and call on a web search to ground your image in reality. If you ask for a QR code, it generates an actual scannable code. And amazingly, it self-refines. It actually checks its own work and corrects its errors before it even shows you the final result. What's truly fascinating here is how Muse integrates with the real world. Because it's an agent built inside Meta's ecosystem, it can pull real data directly into the generative process. Say you ask it to redesign a living room. It doesn't just invent fake chairs, it actively sources actual furniture listings straight from Facebook Marketplace. And of course, as we mentioned right at the start, it pulls real human likenesses directly from Instagram using those @mentions. It is literally connecting the generative AI world to the actual social graph. But here comes the friction. Section 6, the Instagram privacy catch. So the crucial point we have to understand is this. When you type @friend and the AI generates a photorealistic image of them, it isn't doing magic. It is actively pulling visual references from their public Instagram photos. The reality of this feature is that public Instagram accounts are feeding this AI generation by default. Your public photos are literally the building blocks that allow other people to generate images of you. Naturally, this has definitely caught the attention of global privacy watchdogs. As a really interesting analysis from the Decoder points out, this feature is very likely to face severe pushback in Europe. See, the European Union has far stricter data protection rules, specifically the GDPR. The whole idea that biometric data, like someone's face, can be pulled into a generative AI model by a third party without direct, explicit consent for that specific generation, that is a massive legal gray area right now. To understand how Meta is handling this right now, here is the current breakdown. If your Instagram account is set to public, you are opted in by default. No way around it. To stop your likeness from being used in these AI prompts, you have to proactively go into your app settings, navigate to the sharing and reuse section, and manually toggle the feature off. Now, if your account is private, your photos are currently protected from this specific @mention feature, which relies on your existing privacy boundaries. And beyond just sourcing the photos, there's the whole issue of what happens after the image is actually made. The EU AI Act, which fully kicks in by August 2026, requires that deepfakes and AI images of real people be clearly labeled so humans recognize them as artificial. Right now, Meta is relying on something called Content Seal, which applies invisible watermarks to the files, but regulators are actively questioning this. Does an invisible mark, one that a regular person scrolling their feed literally cannot see, actually satisfy a law demanding recognizable labeling? It's a huge debate. And that leaves us with a really profound question to walk away with today. We've seen that Meta's tools, Emu, Muse, the Vibes app, they can build incredibly vivid, dynamic worlds from our words, faster and better than we've ever seen before. The capability is just amazing. But if our personal memories, our social graphs, and our own photos are the default building blocks for everyone else's generations, who really owns the final picture? It's this deep tension between breathtaking innovation and personal data ownership, and we are all going to have to navigate it together. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, I definitely encourage you to check your own privacy settings and keep learning.